Julia heard the footsteps and squeezed her eyes shut. She recognized them at once. Clop, clop. It's me coming, your hateful stepmother. It had been 6 months since her stepmother had been both her father and her mother. And if Harper used to play the good woman very masterfully, now she had no intention of hiding her real self. As soon as Julia was brought home from the hospital, Harper immediately told her, I really hope you won't be in this world long. Actually, it would be better for everyone if you were dead, but you've managed to hinder me here too. I won't kill you, of course, but I will do everything to make sure that before you come of age, you will die on your own. It seemed to Julia at the time that all her stepmother's words were imaginary. It simply could not be real. Apparently, the medications, several heavy surgeries, and a terrible sense of guilt were taking their toll. But very soon she realized that Harper was not kidding. The girl really was a great hindrance to her. And now Julia knew that her stepmother would stop at nothing. There was too much money at stake. Until a few years ago, Julia was a happy person. She went to university, adored her beloved daddy, and needed absolutely nothing. Despite her father's huge fortune, she was never an upstart, never learned to drink anything that can burn like her friends, and in general was the joy and pride of her daddy. Julia did not remember her mother. Of course, she really lacked a woman's attention, but she was so used to her daddy replacing everyone else that she didn't feel very deprived. And then, when my father turned 45, he brought Harper into the house. He introduced them and said they were dating. Basically, Julia, who was already 20 at the time, understood that the couple had accomplished a real feat by not getting married all that time. So she met Harper affectionately. She didn't like the woman terribly. At first, the girl didn't even understand why. Beautiful, well groomed, and polite. Then she understood. It was her eyes. They were not kind of lifeless, but cold and empty. And most interestingly, the expression in her eyes, her gaze, never changed whether she was looking at the couple, at Julia, or at the table or the wall. But when expensive things, especially jewelry, came into her sight, her eyes flashed. Julia and Harper maintained unspoken neutrality. They tried not to cross each other's paths and to be polite to each other. The father saw that his girls were not fighting, and only then did he propose to Harper. The day it all happened, Julia was running home as fast as she could. She clutched her new driver's license in her hand. She passed the exam and passed on the first try, and now she was running home, not only to please her father, but also to finally take her car for a ride. A month ago, father had given her a beautiful red car. Daddy, I passed! The father went out into the hall. His face was upset, even angry. Congratulations. A furious Harper rushed past. Dad, something happened? No, my girl, it's okay. Just burdens of married life. Now he could tell his daughter that his wife demanded half of the company to be transferred to her because she wanted to be assured of her future. He told her that the whole company would belong only to his daughter, which, just in case, is started in the will. Oh, what happened to Harper? He'd never seen her like that, and he even thought that he had been too hasty with this marriage. But that was all for later. And now he did not want to spoil Julia's joy. When are you going to take me for a ride? Oh, Daddy, if you have time, shall we go now? Let's go now. They drove out of town. Julia looked at her father. Well, what do you think? Julia, it is so great as everything you do. And then, from behind a curve, a truck jumped out at them. Julia pressed the brake pedal, but it just failed, so the speed did not decrease. The father realized everything. He grabbed the steering wheel and twisted it, putting his side of the car under the truck. The door opened. Well, not dead yet? What do you need, Harper? You don't know? I need you to leave this world before you turn 21. And you wouldn't be able to inherit. You won't. I'll inherit. And you won't get in my way. Harper smiled. Julia was wary of her smile. There was something sinister about it. You know, honey, I've got an idea. As you're sick, or rather, you're a bloody log, an invalid, and it's very hard for you to be in the town, so you're moving to the country house. By the way, I fired your nurse today, and I found you another one. The new sitter will take care of you the way you deserve. I wonder if you ordered it from hell. Julia was desperate. What had Harper come up with again? You almost right, honey. She pulled out a piece of paper and began to read. David Crowley was convicted 7 years ago. The killer also behaved very aggressively in prison. He broke a lot of noses and bones of his cellmates. How do you like it? Harper almost danced for joy. He has nowhere to live, nothing to drink, and he hasn't seen a woman in so long. I congratulate you, dear. Very soon you will meet your daddy. In the meantime, you need to gather all the necessary things. Harper danced her way out of the room. After a couple of hours, during which Julia stared blankly at the ceiling, they came for her. She had once loved their country house very much, but now, realizing that this would most likely be the final stage of her life, Julia wanted to cry. Harper paid those who helped bring Julia here and looked around with satisfaction. Look how nice it is here. The birds are singing, and the air is fresh. And the best of all, there is no one around. You can scream or weep, but no one will hear you anyway. The fridge is full of food, so that the nanny may even feed you, so that you do not starve to death quickly. Alright, honey, I gotta go. Harper sent her an air kiss and left the room. Julia heard her talking to some man and realized that the new sitter had already arrived. David could not believe in his own luck. He had only been free for a week. He did not even bother to talk to anyone he knew, as he knew that after what had happened, no one would even want to talk to him, and it was out of the question for him to be listened to. His house had been taken for damage compensation, so he had nowhere to go. He tried to get a job as a janitor, and they almost hired him, but then some woman recognized him. She raised such a shriek that he was literally pushed out. Well, what did he want? Even the janitors were watching TV. He was squatting against the wall of the store when a fancy car drove past him. It stopped a little ways away and then backed up. A beautiful woman in her 30s got out of the car. David stood up. What does she want? She looked at him with interest, and there was a lot to see. 2 meters tall, broad shoulders, a too-weak beard, an almost bald head, and clothes that had long gone out of fashion. Have you just been released? He was a little taken aback. Yes. What were you in jail for? Why you... Speak up, and you'll make money. He was very hungry, just starving, and he said, Murder. The woman smiled. She handed him a large bill. Here, go eat. I'll be here in an hour. Wait for me here. Do you want a job? Very much indeed. That's good. When David heard what kind of a job he was being offered, he was shocked. But you don't know me. I just got out of prison. That's what appeals me. Of course he said yes. Who would turn down a live-in job in his situation? When the woman left, David looked around. Quite a mansion. He was aware, of course, that a country house was not cheap, but not like this. Apparently this family had not just a lot of money, but an enormous amount of money. The only thing he did not understand was why he was here. He opened the door to the room and immediately encountered the sharp yet frightened look in the girl's eyes. Hello, my name is David. He went closer to the bed where Julia was lying. The girl shrank back. Well, that's it. This is a scary man. She squeezed her eyes shut, but nothing happened. She had to open her eyes. The man was standing in front of the bed, arms crossed over his chest. Are you always laying down? Julia barely nodded. Are you allowed to sit? She shrugged her shoulders vaguely. The doctor said she could, but her stepmother told Julia to lay down. She couldn't sit up herself, and there was no one to help her. The ex-nurse was afraid. There were cameras everywhere. It's clear that nothing is clear. Are you hungry? Julia looked at him in surprise. She did not understand anything. In her mind, a convict who was aggressive and was in jail for murder should have pounced on her by now. She thought maybe it was better to die on full stomach, especially since no one had fed her today. The girl looked up at the man and again nodded. Well, wait 10 minutes, let me see what we have. He looked around, saw the TV remote, and handed it to Julia. Don't be bored. He went out, and the girl stared after him dumbfoundedly. Was she imagining it? Or was he really smiling? Maybe he was some kind of maniac and needed to tame his victim first. David showed up about 20 minutes later. Julia had time to get absorbed in the show and forgot why she had been brought here. When he entered the room, she shuddered. The man was pushing a table on the wheels in front of him, rolling up to her bed. She threw a glance at the food. Fried eggs, fresh vegetable salad, bread in large slices, smoked meat slashed through. Nothing special, but everything smelled so good. He stopped, looked at her, bent down, and held out his arm toward her. Julia squealed. David recoiled. What are you doing? Does it hurt? No, what do you want? I want you to sit down. Or are you going to eat lying down? Julia blushed. He bent down again, set her down, and propped her up on two sides with pillows. It was good for her to watch from a normal angle. Eat, and then we talk. After a hearty dinner, he brought himself coffee and tea for her. He pulled up a chair and turned down the sound on the TV. Well, tell me, Julia, what did you displease this woman so much? And Julia, not understanding why, told him everything about the couple, the car, the accident, and how she was told that she would never get up. In one word, everything. He listened without interrupting. In the end, he asked, do you think she expects me to kill you? Well, something like that. That's very interesting. Alright, you go to bed tonight. We talk tomorrow. Tell me, is this your summer country house? Yes. Is there your medical history here, by chance? I don't know. Unless it's in my father's office. Up there on the second floor. What do you need it for? I am interested in it, as I used to be into medicine. Well, look over there. By the way, there's a lot of that stuff there, if you need a change of clothes. In the morning, Julia was awakened by smell of coffee. She opened her eyes and realized she hadn't woken up once during the night. May I have one? You can. I've read here that you are allowed to do anything. David slammed a thick folder on the table and went into the kitchen. Then he came back, silently took her in his arms, and carried her to the bathroom. Julia was very embarrassed, but you can't escape natural things. And they drank coffee and talked. And you don't really look like a convicted killer. Well, I'm a convict, of course, but I'm not a murderer. Julia stared at him in surprise. Is it possible? Yesterday you told me stories. Today I will tell you stories. I'm a doctor, a surgeon. I loved my job very much, and I always took on the toughest cases. It just so happened that I got a job in a private clinic. Along with me, my boss was a man for whom the most important things was money. He bought a batch of low quality drugs. I immediately realized that it was better not to use it. After surgery, people are already weak, and the body still has to fight it, and I strictly forbade to use it in my department. Then I was told that if I would show off, they would just throw me out. I thought, if they throw me out, they'll kill everyone with this stuff. So I agreed. True, I bought medicine with my own money and substituted it. One day my medicine was missing somewhere, and all the patients were injected with the other. In the morning, 6 people died, and I had pockets full of receipts. And just for this medicine, Julia listened with bated breath. It turned out that she wasn't the only one to whom life had been turned backward. Which hospital did you work at? That's where you were treated, and I don't really understand why you can't walk, but I'll figure it out if you let me. In the evening, David took Julia outside. He put her in the armchair, and he started cooking barbecue. Julia hasn't had the slightest bit of such positivity in her life lately. For 2 days, David studied the girl's medical history, and on the third, looking at her with red eyes, he asked, are you ready to trust me? Julia smiled. Of course, my stepmother won't let me leave anyway. She didn't think it would be so painful and scary, but Julia obediently did everything David told her to do. When her stepmother called for the first time, Julia could already sit down and even stand up on her own. She could not only walk on her own yet, but inspired by her success, she knew for sure that now she would not stop. The stepmother, upon learning that Julia was still okay, tried not to show her displeasure in any way, but David said, isn't there anyone who can listen to you and help you? I'm sure the brakes in your car were missing for a reason. There is one person, only my stepmother would never allow us to meet. She almost convinced him that she was a saint, and I was practically incapacitated after the accident. He came once. She injected me with some crap before that. I was mooing and spitting, and it looked terrible. Who is he? It's a friend of our family. My parents. The next day, David left the town. Julia quietly tried to walk, and when no one was around, she almost succeeded. In the evening, a car stopped under the window. It could have been anyone, even her stepmother. Julia pulled the blanket up to her chin. It became so scary. The next minute, she heard voices. It was David and James Larson. Julia sat up, then stood up. Her father's friend and his executor entered the room. Young man, I hope you understand that if I came for nothing, you will be in a big trouble. He turned and froze. Julia? I don't understand. Harper said that you haven't been able to get up for a long time and that you are dying. What's going on, young people? They talked for several hours. Then Mr. Larson began to pack. Don't leave the house. Wait until I get there myself, and I hopefully come tomorrow. The evening was sad. Julia was well aware that she would never see David again. She was afraid to admit to herself that now she could not breathe without this man. At night, she got up quietly and walked leaning against the wall to his room. He was awake, as if he had been waiting for her. He only asked, "You won't regret it?" Mr. Larson came to pick up Julia in the morning. They were drinking tea, and he was telling how Harper behaved when they came for her. And when she was told that the car had been sent for examination and the doctor who had treated Julia had been taken into custody, her face fell. Before she left for the town, Julia took David's hand. "Promise you'll wait for me, you hear?" He smiled. Naive girl. Now she would immerse herself into the usual circle of money and luxury, and she wouldn't even think of him. As soon as the car moved on, Julia turned to the man she had known for years. "Mr. Larson, I need to talk to you. It's about David." David lay down on the couch. He didn't know at all what to do. Wait for Julia? But it had been a week. She had probably forgotten all about him. Leave? What if she came? There was still nowhere for him to go. He turned on the TV. It would have been okay, but it was so boring. The news was on, and David was about to change it, but then he saw his picture on the screen. He jumped up and turned up the volume. As it turned out, Dr. David Crowley became a victim of the devious machinations of the head doctor. He spent several years behind bars, so who will be held responsible for this? It is preliminarily decided the management of the private clinic will pay him compensation for all the years he spent behind bars. This is a very impressive sum. Also, Dr. Crowley will be reinstated in his position after certification. He settled down on the couch. It couldn't be. It just couldn't be real. Could it be Julia? She was the only one who could have brought it all out. Knock knock. "Are you receiving guests?" He twitched. In the doorway stood his Julia. She was holding a cake and a bottle of champagne. "I missed you." He rushed to her, held her close to him, and sighed. "Here it is, happiness." And let anyone try to say that 13 years is a big age difference.